ever suddenly spot something in Clash of Clans you forgot existed, or think back to a feature that you haven't seen in a while and think, whatever happened to that? Well, today we're taking a look at totally random things in Clash that many of us probably forgot exists due to irrelevance to us, or simply because they lost their original purpose and we don't use them. And hey, I'm also going to be giving a bit of history of where these features came from and why they exist in the first place.
Let's do this.
The "you need more gold" pop-up when searching for a base. I will admit, this is a bit of a weird entry on the video, but seriously, when's the last time you saw this pop-up? And be honest, for some of you, it may have been a couple of minutes ago or last week, but others, it may have been years. What a weird flex, huh? But I'm being serious. It isn't that uncommon for players to never run out of gold completely, especially over the years with new level collectors, the loot card, and zero training costs. You have to hit rock bottom to encounter this while searching for a base. And even then, getting to that low of a number is more difficult than you think. And this isn't anything new. People 13 years ago also wondered why this exists. And unfortunately, to my knowledge, we never got a good answer. A lot of us tend to forget that it even costs gold to begin with. I know it tells you literally every time you hit attack and next, but it's like our brains just ignore that information at this point, which is why a lot of us get surprised when we see this. Cloud Chat. This feature is older than you probably think, 2014 old, but no matter how long it's been in the game, there's always been a bit of confusion on how exactly it works or what it's even supposed to be in the first place. I'm sure most of you watching already know, but it's basically when the chat button appears while searching for a base, specifically after a few seconds of seeing clouds. Clouds is the reason it exists in the first place. Way back in the day before the Legends League rework, the higher in trophies you went, the longer it took to find a base. So you would be staring at these clouds for a while. At times, this could be minutes or hours, and there was nothing to do during that time. And so being able to talk to our clanmates and people on global chat was a highly requested feature because it was better than nothing. And it actually made its way into the game in 2014. Cloud Chat unlocks at 3,600 trophies. However, you'll likely not even notice you unlocked it, as at those trophies, clouds are almost non-existent. In fact, it's almost non-existent in the entire game. For that reason, it rarely ever pops up anymore, and if it does, in my experience, I almost never have time to open it, let alone type a word or chat. It's definitely one of those features that has become obsolete, and many, including myself, often forget it even exists until it randomly pops up. I wouldn't be surprised if a large portion of the player base didn't even know it was a thing to begin with. But there is a very niche player base that still utilizes this feature today, and I'll discuss that a bit later in the video, so stick around. Next up is the Game Center and or Google Play account switcher. Now, if you don't use Supercell ID, you're probably looking at me like I'm crazy, but really, when's the last time you used or even saw this feature? For me, it's been years because all of my accounts are on Supercell ID, but obviously at one point this wasn't the case. Way back in the day before Supercell ID existed, your phone's respective account manager was the way to switch your base. So it was Google Play and Game Center. If you got a new device and wanted to log in, or if you had multiple accounts you wanted to switch between, you had to make sure you were logged in into the correct Game Center or Google Play account, and then in the game you'd be prompted to switch accounts and do this whole confirm thing. I don't miss it one bit. However, in 2018, Supercell ID was introduced, and slowly but surely, everyone started to migrate their accounts to Supercell ID. It took a while, but like I said, slowly but surely, most people made the switch. Today, when I get a new phone and log in for the first time, this account switcher doesn't appear. In fact, nothing does. I just have to log into Supercell ID, and this is the case for a lot of us. This feature is basically a thing of the past. But yes, it's still in the game and works the exact same way it did all those years ago. I would say the only people who experience this today are those who are trying to migrate a really old account from years ago, maybe they found it or are trying to recover it, or those who choose not to use Supercell ID altogether. The Master Builder Boat. Depending on where you are in your Clash journey, I bet you didn't know that this was still in the game. But wait a minute, wasn't it always in the base at one point? Now that you mention it, where is it? Well, before I get into that, here's the brief history of that boat. Its original purpose was for when the Master Builder would go gear up your buildings, introduced in the May 2017 update. For a while, this was the only time you saw this boat, but 2 years later in the June 2019 update, they added auto. When you completed all of the auto tasks, you could send the master builder to your village and he would become the 6th builder. And because he used his boat to get there, it would always be in your village until you sent him back. It was honestly pretty cool, and as they started to add sceneries a year later, they started to add custom boats for this. You may have noticed that for a very long time, almost all of them had a custom design for that little boat. But alright, that's enough history of it, so where is it? Why is it never there anymore? It's even missing from all the sceneries. Well, after the Builder Base 2.0 update, Auto was replaced by Bob, and Bob is permanently in the home village, so there is no reason to send the master builder over. You just send Bob and he never uses a boat, so that boat is never utilized for that specific reason anymore, which is why it disappeared. However, the boat is still in the game. You only see it when the master builder comes over to gear up your buildings. It's returned to its original purpose. For someone like me who completed those tasks many years ago, I will never see that boat again unless I create a new account and, do it again. Shield shop. Alright, I definitely didn't forget this exists. I often visit this screen to buy the 2-hour guard if I'm grinding for an upgrade but don't want to stay on the entire time. By the way, you should do that. It's great. It's a lifesaver. This seems to be the most common use case and people wanting to take a break from Legends League. But I've certainly heard and seen a lot of players saying things like, does anyone actually buy shields? Who's buying shields? Forgot this tab was here. This is understandable because over the years, buying shields has increasingly become less of an importance. Back in the day, people cared a lot more about their trophies as trophy pushing was one of the only things you could do in the game. And resources were far more scarce than they are today, so players would buy shields to not get attacked. Today, these things matter less. Who cares about losing a bit of trophies and loot? You can get more of what was stolen in one attack. Shields have lost a lot of their purpose, and I know this doesn't apply to everyone, but it's certainly one of those things that I believe a lot of us can forget it exists. The unable to find villages pop-up. Man, it's been years since I've seen that. I'll spare you the story. And for a lot of us, it's more or less the same reasons we don't see the cloud chat often. Clouds are basically non-existent for the everyday player. There's rarely ever a case where the game will cloud for more than a few seconds or a couple of minutes in worst case scenarios. Way back in the day, before the Legends League rework, this unable to find villages error message was very common for those who were pushing trophies. But after 2019, that was not the case anymore, and ever since, it's easy to forget its existence. However, earlier I mentioned that there was a niche player base that utilizes the cloud chat often and still encounter this error from time to time. Low Town Hall trophy pushers, or trophy pushers in general that climb too high for their Town Hall. If that is the case, you'll begin to encounter these things. Now, I'm talking like a Town Hall 6 pushing to Legends League high, but it is common for even the upper Town Halls like 12, 13, or even 14 to experience more clouds than usual if they're trying to reach, let's say, 5,000 trophies. But the average player is not doing that, and even less encountering this error, which is why both of these things ended up on the video. Profile labels. Released in late 2019, it was originally intended to work together with the new recruitment tools. You selected the labels you were most into, like if you were a base builder or like to participate in wars, and then you could search for clans with similar labels as you, and clans looking for members could also look for players with specific labels. However, because you could and had to manually change these labels yourself, it wasn't an accurate way to find players with specific interests. Players often didn't change the label at all, or didn't pick the ones that most represented themselves. I personally haven't changed mine in since the future came out maybe, and it seems I'm not the only one. This entire recruitment system was essentially dead on arrival, and many of us would forget about these labels altogether. Today, with the notice board, they have no use other than just displaying your interest on your profile. But let's be real, no one's checking them anyway. I don't even check mine. There's also the fact that there is no meaning to the labels. Anyone can use the veteran label and not actually be a veteran. A better question, what does it mean to be a veteran? The game is really old, for crying out loud. Or how about having the clan war label and never attacking in wars? But anyway, over the years, they've discussed wanting to revamp the profile several times, so maybe this will soon change, but in the meantime, I often forget that's even there. And next up, we have this screen, the Builders tab, where you buy more builders. Now, I left this one for way later in the video because I feel like less people may relate. I know not everyone has the 5 builders yet. However, for those of you who do, you probably forgot that there used to be a plus button next to the builders to, buy more of them. And it has its own separate tab that you cannot access from anywhere else. Now, you can purchase builders and still see it in the shop like everything else. However, once you have those 5 builders, that plus button disappears and you can never get to this builders tab anymore. It's gone, inaccessible to you. This is especially true if you don't have any second accounts that might not have those 5 builders, and so you may not have visited this builders tab in years or in over a decade. It's crazy, but it's true. It's certainly something that I personally forgot exists. And finally, we have practice mode. This feature was added all the way back in June 2019. It was around a time when Supercell was trying to show players popular armies that they could use. There were many videos on this topic that predated the practice mode feature, and although it was never confirmed, I do believe these videos had something to do with the addition of practice mode, wanting to show players new armies, and what better way than a tutorial in the game. However, the mode would almost immediately stop being updated. Just a few months after its addition, it seemed like it was already forgotten, and I think that's part of the reason we tend to forget practice mode. They have added several new town halls since then, but no new practice levels. On top of that, the armies and levels are pretty outdated. They don't use new troops, spells, and equipment. It's stuck in time. They never updated it. I guess it's kind of hard to forget it exists because it's there every time you hit that attack button, but like these single player maps, you don't really think about it, it's just there. Now, I understand that I am a Town Hall 17 and there's been no reason for me to play these levels in years, but I still do believe it's a dead feature, especially with the cookbook. It's a way better way to find new armies and it actually gets updated too. I wouldn't be surprised if one day they just completely remove the feature altogether or turn it into something else, I don't know. That'd be great. But yeah, that wraps up my list. Those are 9 things you may have forgotten exist. I had some other stuff that I was going to mention, like the decoration shop, legend trophies, and the Clan Castle sleep button, but maybe that's just things that I forgot. Your decorations go to the decoration shop when they're stashed. I usually just pull them from the village edit mode, but somebody else might do this a little differently. And the Clan Castle sleep button, I heard a lot of people actually use that, so maybe it's just me. But yeah, let me know your thoughts. Is there something you often forget exists? Let me know down below. And hey, before you go, YouTube thinks you'll like this next video, so check it out. As always, I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace!